Let's start going. Okay, so let's go around. Say hi to everyone again. Is that you?
Nope, that's not me. I think that was somebody else.
So hi everybody. And we've only got a small crowd, so let's just get started. So today we're going to be starting a new section, and this section is fundamentals of observance. And basically, this section. So in our book, we're now at so this book here. We're now at lesson 21, which starts a new section. And the first section that we're going to deal with when it comes to observance is the laws of Shabbos. So I wanted to try and understand a little bit, what is the law? What are the laws of Shabbos? And we're going to look in detail as to see how we keep Shabbos, why we keep Shabbos, and what it actually means and why it's so important. Now we know that Shabbos is one of the main tenets, right, of Judaism. It's a very big concept in Judaism, right, that of keeping Shabbos. And we know many religions have a day of rest, a day which is special, right, in the week. So for example, in Christianity you have Sunday, and in Islam you have Friday, and they have other religions with different days of the week. But Shabbos, we'll see why it's important and exactly what it is that that the Torah wants from us. So I'll start off with is a Yalkut Shimoni. A Yalkut Shimoni is a commentary on it's a midrashic commentary, and the Yalkut Shimoni, it's not known who is the author of the Yalkut Shimoni. It dates back more than 1,000 years. The Yalkut Shimoni brings a very interesting thing. It says that Abraham wanted to make a promise or a pact with God. And Hashem said to Abraham, he said that you are special to me, and your children and your descendants are going to have a special connection, a special relationship, and eventually you're going to become a chosen people. Now, Abraham says to Hashem, and this is in the previous week's portion of the week, Vayera. So Abraham says to Hashem, can you give me a sign? Can you show me some way how I will know that I have a special connection with you that others do not have? And Hashem says to Abraham, I'm going to give you a special commandment that I'm going to ask you to circumcise yourself, and the circumcision will be as a covenant between me and you. And with that covenant, it will be like a sign for you to know that I've chosen you as a special person, right, in history and in terms of what your mission on earth is going to be. Now, the Yalkut Shimoni says an interesting thing. Right? The Yalkut Shimoni says that if we look at where does Abraham have to make his son, right? His son is essentially on his private parts, right? That's where the circumcision takes place, right, on the private parts. Now, the Yalkut Shimoni says that the sign of our connection to Hashem is something which is very private, right? Our connection to Hashem is a private and individualistic thing, and it's not to be flaunted or to be shown around to others. So much so that it's a Chaya Adam, right? So those who will be learning that soon. He very beginning says that one of the main tenets of Judaism is a concept called Hatznei Lo Leches. Hatznei Lo Leches means act discreetly. To do whatever you do it in a very discreet and tactful way. So much so that it shouldn't be that someone can look at you and try and guess or work out, what the spiritual level you're holding on. Right? So you should almost camouflage or not be. It shouldn't be known by how you appear as to what your spiritual level is. Right? So that's something which we call Hatznei Lo Leches. Go privately, go discreetly, and this is what we see from the sign that Hashem gives to Abraham, that his bris, his covenant, his sign, but how much he's related to Hashem is all got to do with something which is private. It's a private area, so that Abraham would walk around, no one will know that he's carrying a sign that makes him close and connected to Hashem. And so that's the first thing I wanted to start with. Now, we know that what is a sign? What does it mean to have a sign between you and Hashem? So if you think of it, let's say take a working example, right? So let's say a person goes to work and you start a new job. So you may want to have a sign, right? Your employer may say to you, you know, these are your hours, this is your times, this is your deal. And you would ask and say, can I have a contract? Right? Now, the contract essentially is a sign. It's some proof, a tangible form of evidence to say that there's an agreement between me and you. And this is what a sign is. It's some way to demonstrate and to verify that you have a connection and that you have an agreement in place. Another sign that you might have is, if, for example, let's say a person gets married, you may ask for a wedding ring, right? The wedding ring, right, would be a sign to say that there's a connection between me and you, right? This ring represents with a sign for me to know that I have a relationship with you. And another kind of sign which I thought of is, if you think of it, say, death certificate, God forbid a person dies. So you want to have some kind of tangible proof of evidence or something to show afterwards to verify the fact. And you would ask for a death certificate. So the death certificate is a sign that the person has died. You now have some sort of verifiable proof. Another example, right, is a university degree. Right? You've studied for many years and you want to be able to show that you've put in the input, you've studied whatever it is. So you ask for a sign, you ask, can I have a piece of paper which demonstrates I have attended or I've completed whatever it is that I said I would. Now, this sign, right, is something which we have with a covenant between Hashem and us, and three things which are mentioned in the Torah, which are considered signs, okay? Which means that the three mitzvahs that exist in the Torah, where Hashem says through these, are we disconnected? Okay. Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, somehow it just got a little bit faint and low there on
All
your
right.
mic.
Okay. So there are three mitzvahs where Hashem says that these are signs between me and you. Now, what are the mitzvahs? So Shabbos is one of the mitzvahs. Hashem says that you should keep Shabbos, and if by keeping Shabbos, it's a sign between me and you. Right? We say in the prayers, Oisi la'olam, it's a sign forever, Baini, right, between me, right, and you, that by keeping Shabbos, we now are establishing and we have a sign that we are connected to Hashem. The other mitzvah is the mitzvah of tefillin. Right, tefillin is also a sign between us and Hashem. And the third mitzvah is the mitzvah of a bris, right, the covenant, right, the circumcision. And this is a sign also that we have a connection, like Abraham had that a connection between Hashem. So the bris, the circumcision, is this connection. Now there's a concept in Judaism which says as follows. It says that al pi shnai eidim yakum davar, that through two witnesses something is established. Now what that means is that we need two witnesses in court to verify that something happened. So let's say I borrow money from you and you come and claim it back. You'll need to come with witnesses to say, yes, we did in fact see this event happening, and these witnesses can testify on your behalf, and we would use them and believe them based on the fact that there's two of them, and there's a law about that. Now, it's brought in the commentaries that when we pass away, we go up to heaven and we to Hashem. So there are witnesses, right, that will testify on our behalf, were we connected to Hashem in our lifetime or not. Right? And what are the witnesses? So the witnesses are these signs. So the mitzvah of a circumcision, the mitzvah of circumcision walks around with the person the whole day, right? And that circumcision acts as a ois, as a sign, and it becomes a witness, and that gives testimony that you walked with Hashem, you were connected to Hashem. Right? Another one is the tefillin. A person wears tefillin every day. The tefillin themselves come in front of Hashem and they testify to say that you kept this mitzvah. Right? And the third one is keeping Shabbos. A person who keeps Shabbos, right, is at the mitzvah of Shabbos. A person's observance of Shabbos will come in forward and say, yes, I was kept. Right? Shabbos so and so was my name. Right? Now I give testimony that this person kept Shabbos. So the mitzvah of Shabbos is something which testifies, right? And if a person has two witnesses to verify that he walked with Hashem all the days of his life, so then he can kind of be testified and he gets to a heavenly court, so Hashem can see. He will have mitzvahs, right, commandments, and deeds that he's done, which will testify on his behalf. Now, I want to read for you the mitzvah of Shabbos. Where does it come from? Where does this mitzvah originate? That we have a mitzvah called Shabbos at all. So it actually comes from the Ten Commandments, and it's written in two places. So for those of you who want to get, I use this book over here, right? You may have one. It's the Tanakh, right? And it's the Torah, Nevi'im, and the Kesuvim. And it's in the Ten Commandments. It's written in two places. I'll read and translate for you. So it says, "Zachor es yom Shabbos lekadshoy." Zachor is remember the day of Shabbos to sanctify it. Sheishes yomim tavoy, for 6 days you should work. V'asiso kol malachtecha, and you should do all of your work. V'yom hashvi, and on the seventh day, Shabbos laHashem Elokecha, Shabbos for Hashem your God. Lo isase kol malacha, you shouldn't do any work. Ato, you, ubincha, your son, ubitcha, and your daughter, abdecha, your servant, v'amasacha, your maidservant, ubehemtecha, and your animal, the gercha, asher bisharecha, and the convert who lives in your gates. Kisheishis yomim, because in 6 days, Asra Hashem es hashmayim v'esaoretz, Hashem made the heaven and the earth, v'esayom es kol asher bam, v'yonach b'yom hashvi. And he rested on the seventh day. So that's the first time in the Torah that it's mentioned, in the Ten Commandments. Now the Ten Commandments is repeated again in Deuteronomy, in Parshas V'eschanan, and over there it's written slightly different. It doesn't say remember. It says Shemoris Yom HaShabbos Lekadshoy, God, the day of Shabbos, to make it holy. Kasher tzivisicha Hashem Elokecha, like Hashem commanded you. Sheishis Yomim Tavo, it sounds familiar. It says 6 days you should work. V'asiso kol malachtecha, and you should do all that, all your work. V'yom hashvi Shabbos laHashem Elokecha, and on the day of Shabbos, it's a day of rest for Hashem. Lo isase kol malacha, you shouldn't do any work. Ato bincho bitecha abdecha masacha v'shorcha v'chamarcha v'chol v'hemtecha v'gercha shebisharecha. Okay, and over there we find very similar passages which indicate the mitzvah of Shabbos. So the mitzvah of Shabbos comes directly from the Ten Commandments, and that is the source of where the mitzvah of Shabbos is. Now, I wanted to just start off with something which is maybe interesting. So sometimes keeping the laws of Shabbos, and this is actually an introduction to the laws of Shabbos, which we'll hopefully cover in the next couple of weeks. So we found that on Shabbos, sometimes the mitzvahs of Shabbos can be a little bit tricky for people to learn. And sometimes it can feel a little bit inconvenient and can be a little bit difficult to keep it. So I'll show you a little thing which I have. It's a tag. You might see it says on it, just for today. So I was once a sponsor for someone at Narcotics Anonymous, and they had a very good saying, which they have. They say, just for today. Okay. Now the idea behind it is actually a very powerful concept. And that is that if we try and think of any adjustment or change to life, and we think of it as a long-term fix, we're now never allowed to do X, we're never allowed to do Y, so it becomes very difficult to overcome such a challenge. But if you break it up into smaller parts and you just think to yourself, just for today I'm not allowed to do X, Y, and Z. So when starting the laws of Shabbos, if a person thinks to themselves, no, just for today, I'm not allowed to drive. Just for today, I'm not allowed to, do whatever law it is that you can't do on Shabbos. So sometimes that can be the key to getting used to it and to overcoming it until eventually it will become a second nature to you and you won't feel anything about keeping. In fact, quite the contrary. Once you get used to keeping Shabbos, it will become almost second nature. It will be something which you are able to do quite easily and you won't even think twice about doing those things. But definitely a very good strategy when you start keeping Shabbos. Now, in the book I wrote that there are 7 blessings which come to a person who keeps Shabbos. Now there's many, many blessings, right? And it's brought down in the commentaries, hundreds of blessings in fact. But I want to look at perhaps just 7 of the rewards that can be felt by a person who keeps Shabbos. And maybe we'll look at 1 or 2 interesting stories about things which occur for the rewards of the benefits of keeping Shabbos. So the first one is that Hashem fulfills the will of someone who keeps Shabbos. There's a concept which is brought in make your will, right, like the will of Hashem. And if you make your will, you do what Hashem wants, then Hashem will do what you want. Okay, which means that your power, the power of your prayers are enhanced by keeping Shabbos. If you bend your will and you do what Hashem wants you to do, so then Hashem will then do what you want. So essentially, you now enhance. Hashem will make your powers more powerful. And there's a concept which is brought in the sages, which says a tzaddik gozer v'Hashem mekayim. A tzaddik can make a decree, and Hashem will fulfill that decree. So a person who's a righteous person, he can make a decree, and that decree will become true, to become reality. Now, there's a story which I heard. It was brought in the name of Rabbi Chanan Wasserman. So Rabbi Chanan Wasserman was a Rosh Yeshiva in a yeshiva in Baranovich before the Holocaust, and he did eventually pass away in the Holocaust, but they say the story in his name, that one time the Nazis stormed into the yeshiva where he was, and they had one Nazi pointed a loaded gun right at Chanan Wasserman's head. It was cocked and everything, and he was about to pull the trigger. And Chanan Wasserman says to this Nazi, "Your hand cannot move." And the Nazi looked at him in shock. You know, what do you mean my hand can't move? He didn't even know what he was saying. And he said it, he repeated it again. He said, "Your hand cannot move. Your hand cannot move." And he kept on repeating that line over. And when the Nazi was fed up with him, he tried to pull the trigger and noticed that his hand was actually frozen. He was not able to pull the trigger. For some reason, the Nazi was unable. His hand remained frozen with the gun to his head, and he tried as much as he wanted to, but eventually gave up out of frustration, and he walked away. And Rabbi Chanan Wasserman later on, the students asked him, "What happened? How did you? I could see miraculous. How did you do that? What was going on?" And Rabbi Chanan Wasserman said to his students, he said, "My whole life, I've been very, very careful never to exaggerate and never to say anything which wasn't truthful. And because of that, so in heaven, they know that all the words which I say are true. And if I was going to lie, and if I would say to this Nazi, right, your hand cannot move, and it could move, so Hashem would be making me lie. And Hashem wouldn't want to make me have a lie in my hands. So by me guarding my mouth and me guarding what I say, so Hashem fulfilled my will, right? Hashem didn't want to spoil my perfect track record of not having lied at all. And because of that, so when he held the gun, his hand couldn't move. He actually, there's an example, modern day example of Tzaddik Gozer Hashem Mekayim, that a person who's a righteous person can make a decree, and it can go against the laws of nature. And because of that, the Nazi was unable to kill him. So this is a merit. A person who keeps Shabbos, who bends his will, and who commits himself to the observance of Shabbos. So although it may be difficult initially, but you now have an ability that Hashem will now look at what you do and take it in a more serious way, and you can make decrees, so to say, in the will. Now, the next blessing which comes from keeping Shabbos is the blessing of financial success. Now, there's a very interesting thing, right, which is brought down by the Torah Temimah. It's the Torah Temimah in Parshas Vayechi. And it says over there that Jacob met God, and God says to Jacob, you know, what can I do for you? And Jacob said, I'll follow in your ways, provided that you give me two things, right? Lechem, bread to eat, or beged dilbosh, clothes to wear. And he says that to God, right, I'll do whatever you want, just give me those two things, bread to eat and clothes to wear. And on that, the Torah Temimah is a very interesting concept. It's brought in the sages that Kashem is a noisav shu adam kriyas yamsuf. It is difficult for Hashem to provide an income, to provide sustenance for a person, like it is difficult for Hashem to split the sea. Right? That's how difficult it is. It's a very big task for Hashem to provide a person with their sustenance and with their income. Now the Torah asked the obvious question. It says, what's difficult for Hashem? Hashem can do anything. So why is it difficult for Hashem to provide a person with the income? Right? But everything's easy relative, right? In Hashem's eyes, everything should be easy. So what's the difficulty? Why do the sages say it's as difficult as splitting of the sea? So the sages explain, the Torah Temimah explains that at the splitting of the sea, the Jewish people were on a very low level, right? They were not actually worthy of being saved, right? They were idol worshippers that fall into the lowest levels of impurity, and the angels in heaven were saying to Hashem, right, why are you killing the Egyptians, right, in the sea, and why are you saving the Jewish people? It's not fair, right? Both of them are just as wicked. Neither of them has more merits than the other, and God had to kind of struggle to answer these angels. And that was the difficulty, not in performing the miracle, but in finding a merit to save the Jewish people. And this is what it means, that a person's livelihood is as difficult as splitting of the sea, meaning that it's as difficult for God has to find a merit within you that you should be worthy to be financially successful. And keeping Shabbos is one of those mitzvahs where if you have that in your bag of collection of mitzvahs, of good deeds, Hashem can look at your actions and can say, you have that merit which allows you to be financially successful. So there's a special merit in keeping Shabbos, that Shabbos will allow a person. It's one of those things where if a person keeps Shabbos, a person, Hashem can look at that person and say, you are worthy to achieve financial success. Now, there's a very famous, not so famous, but there's a story, and there are many stories like this, of someone called Yisrael Dov Waxman. Okay, you may have heard of the story. So Yisrael Dov Waxman, he originally came from Lithuania just before the Second World War. And like many people of his time, right, he was trying to escape before Europe went into the state that it did. And he went to America to go and work. Now, obviously, the life in America compared to Lithuania was very, very different. And he didn't have many skills. And his job, what he did was he went to America to try and reestablish his life with the hope that one day he'll be able to bring back his family and to get everyone over to America. Now he worked in a shop where his job was to iron shirts. Right, that was his profession. And so he was ironing shirts like in a laundromat. That's what he was doing to make a living. And obviously he wasn't making that much, but whatever he could save up to try and send back home, he would. Now he started off. We came in the summertime, and Shabbos was coming in very late, and he could work a full day on Friday. But as it started getting winter time, Shabbos started coming in earlier and earlier. He realized that he's going to, he's not going to be able to work on Shabbos, and he made a promise before he left to his father that no matter what happens in America, he's going to keep Shabbos. So he continued working. As it started getting winter, he found that he had to, came Friday, and Friday started impinging on his work time. And he said to his boss, listen here, I'm not going to be able to work, right? It's Friday, I need to take off early. And the first Shabbos that happened, so his boss fired him on the spot, and he picked up his ironing board and he told him to get out of here, right? He fired him straight away. And obviously he had nowhere else to go. He was walking home, holding his ironing board under his arm, walking down the street, and he thought to himself, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't carry my ironing board. It's going to be Shabbos. So let me walk to the nearest shop. And the nearest shop was some kind of Chinese vendor. And he says to the Chinese vendor, can you hold onto my ironing board? I'll pick it up from you after Shabbos. And with that, he goes home. After Shabbos comes, he goes back to the Chinese vendor. And he says, you still have my ironing board. He's half expecting that he's not going to get it back. Right? And that was his only thing he could do. Anyways, the Chinese vendor does have the ironing board, and he gets his ironing board back, and he's walking from the Chinese vendor with his ironing board back in the street when someone else meets him, and someone else says to him, I'm looking for someone to iron shirts. You've got an ironing board. Can you come work for me? So he goes and he works for this new person, and it turns out that the new person paid him about, I think, 30 times more than he was getting previously. And he was actually being underpaid continuously for all those months that he was working in the first place. Had he not been fired for that Shabbos, he would never have had that opportunity to get the much higher salary, 30 times as much. So he was making essentially that in a month, he was getting like years worth of earnings in months instead of years. And that was all due to the fact that he was so adamant that he had to keep Shabbos, that brought it. So sometimes the financial success can come around in various different ways. So that's another blessing. Okay, another blessing we find a person who keeps Shabbos is that heavenly decrees can be broken. Okay. Now, what does it mean to have a heavenly decree? So, a heavenly decree is something which is written into the laws of nature. So, for example, the sages, the Ramchal especially speaks about this, that take gravity, for example. Gravity is called in the sages a heavenly decree, which means that Hashem wrote it into the laws of nature. It's not something which is very easily changed. And when we say that on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Hashem decrees X, Y, and Z on you, it almost becomes fixed into nature, that this is the path that you're going to take, and it's almost unbreakable and unshakable. Now, the merit of keeping Shabbos can change a heavenly decree. That's how powerful the mitzvah of keeping Shabbos is. It is brought that a person who says and answers Yehei Shmei Rabbah, the only other thing which I know of which has the same power as Shabbos, is a person who answers in Kaddish. If you answer Yehei Shmei Rabbah with all your concentration, all your strength, then that can uproot a decree that a person has. It says that if a person, for example, has a 70-year decree, which is essentially a lifetime decree, if Hashem has decided that your life should go one particular way, and you and you keep Shabbos, so then Hashem can change it around, and you will then be able to have a different life completely. Your life will be something completely different because you kept Shabbos. So Shabbos has the power to take away any bad decree which a person has, and a bad decree is something which is very solid and fixed. There's also another story of a similar concept, and that is when we finish a tractate in the Talmud, we say Hadran Allah, right? We will return to you, which means we will learn you again. We're not going to put you back on the shelf. We're going to come back and revisit you. And at the same time, we say interesting words. We say Hadrach Alon, you will return to us. Now, it's brought by the sages that a person who finishes a tractate, the Torah which a person studies comes back to his defense. Whenever a person is in trouble, if a person is ever in a time of need or in danger, any merit which you've done comes back and shouts out in front of Hashem to save you. Now, it's one of those mitzvahs which is especially powerful is the mitzvah of keeping Shabbos. The person's got the mitzvah of Shabbos under his belt. The person has that mitzvah, he's kept Shabbos. So then, if a person, God forbid, is ever in a time of danger, the Shabbos that you kept come in front of Hashem and they shout out to Hashem that you should be rescued, you should be saved. So this is another benefit. Another one is forgiveness for your sins. The person who keeps Shabbos, it says that even if you've got other sins around, even if you've got other sins that you've done, but if you
on your end there, Rabbi, it's a little low. Yeah, the mic sounds a little low on your end.
Okay, can you hear me now?
That's better.
All right. So it says that a person who keeps Shabbos, so even if you have other sins, Hashem will forgive you if you've got the mitzvah of Shabbos. So Shabbos is weighted differently to other mitzvahs which we have. I'll tell you what else it's very interesting over here. Which says that there's a story with Rabbi Yaakov Yisrael Kanievsky. Some of him knows as the Stipler. Right? I suggest you look him up after. It's very famous. And they say that he was one of the last people in our generations to have Ruach HaKodesh, what we call a spirit of holiness. Very, very holy man. And he had was often called to be a sandek at a bris. Okay, now when we learned about the laws of circumcision, we learned that one of the role players of the bris is someone who holds the baby while the circumcision is taking place. We call that a sandek. And it's brought that a person who's the sandek is a segula, a way to become wealthy. And so Kanievsky, the Stipler, was often called to be a sandek. And his students asked him, they said, you're struggling in life, you're very poor. Now, how come it doesn't seem to be working? That you're a sandek all the time, and you haven't made a lot of money. So what about the blessings that the sages gave? So he said, you know what my fortune really was? My fortune was to be completely destitute, and if I wasn't doing this mitzvah, right, I wouldn't survive at all. So sometimes we don't realize what our fortune, what our position should have been compared to what it is at the moment. So this very often with the blessings and the brachas which we see from keeping Shabbos, so we have to keep in mind what should have been and what is right now, right, and the difference between them. Okay, the next one, right, is the blessing of Yiras Shamayim. This is a very big one, and this is a person who keeps Shabbos merits to having fear of heaven. Just to give you a little story of what it means to have fear of heaven. So when we see later on, there are different eras, and we know that in history, as we go along, at the time of the giving of the Torah, so people saw God and were able to connect in a very, very powerful way. Now, every generation subsequent to the Torah loses a little bit of that steam and loses a little bit of what we call Yiras Shamayim, fear of heaven. It's brought in the Talmud, one of the sages, right, the Tanaim, or who lived the previous generation, they had very, very high Yiras Shamayim. So much so that the Talmud says that the next generation, if they were like animals, then we are people, and if we are people, then they were like angels. So the difference between people, animals, and angels, right, that was the difference between the amount of fear of heaven which they had. So once an Amora who lived in a later generation prayed, he said, "Can I please have the fear of heaven like those of the previous generation?" And God listened to his requests, and suddenly his body becomes filled with fear of heaven. And with his fear of heaven was so intense that he hid under a table, and he became almost paralyzed with fear, right, of what it means to actually know that there's God in the world and to understand what it really means that Hashem exists and to do everything that Hashem wants. Now, a person who keeps Shabbos will automatically feel a different sense of connection to Hashem, and Hashem will be present and felt in your life completely different to one that doesn't keep Shabbos. And that's it's not just because of the actions that you do, but it's a gift, a blessing which comes from keeping Shabbos. That keeping Shabbos enables you to sensitizes you to feeling what the presence of Hashem is. And essentially, with Yiras Shamayim, with fear of heaven, a person can navigate their way through the rest of Judaism. And without it, so a person can be very lost, right? If you can't feel a connection with Hashem, very often you can just go astray, and your actions feel like they're meaningless and worthless. You have no real direction. So the mitzvah of keeping Shabbos is a gift which Hashem gives to a person. If you keep Shabbos, you'll be able to feel Hashem's connection. Now, the next one, and we're going to come to take questions in a moment, is the Geula. Okay, very important concept, and that is that the mitzvah of keeping Shabbos is one of the mitzvahs which will bring the final redemption. Right? It says in the sages that if the Jewish people would keep 2 consecutive Shabboses, that one Shabbos after another, immediately Mashiach would come. And that's all that's needed, right, to bring Mashiach. If every single Jew in the world would keep Shabbos, one Shabbos after another, immediately after that, the exile would end, and the third temple will be rebuilt immediately. There'll be no more hesitation. Right? So that is a very big thing. So we might not be able to get everyone to keep Shabbos, but if you are keeping Shabbos, you're part of those people who made it that way. Right? And that's something which is very important. That the power of Shabbos, right? Hashem says, if you keep Shabbos, I'm gonna redeem the world because of it. So Geula, the redemption is based on Shabbos. Now the last blessing which I wanted to talk about is that of Gehenna. So last week we spoke about it. After a person dies, a person can go into a place called Gehenna. And Gehenna is where the soul gets purified through different sorts of spiritual fires and sufferings. And it says that one who keeps Shabbos, he's given a blessing that when Shabbos comes, he is taken out of Gehenna. You get to rest from Gehenna on Shabbos, but only if you keep Shabbos. So if you kept Shabbos, then you get to rest on Shabbos, right, in your afterlife. And if you didn't keep Shabbos, so then you don't get to rest on Shabbos in your afterlife. So it's a very powerful concept that Hashem looks at your actions of keeping Shabbos and will allow you to rest in the afterlife from Gehenna on Shabbos. Now, there's a very interesting thing which is brought down in the Midrash, which says that a person shouldn't rush now to take Shabbos out. Very often people, they're in a very big hurry to have the Shabbos to come out already, and they're looking for the 3 stars, and they want to rush and bring Shabbos out as soon as it gets out. So he says if you do that, so Hashem acts what they call midah keneged midah, right? One way, like the way you act towards Hashem, Hashem acts towards you. And if you do that, what happens is in the afterlife, so Hashem rushes to put you back into Gehenna if that's where you belong, right? At the very first opportunity that's considered to be Shabbos going out. So it's brought in the Midrashim that a person shouldn't be too overly hesitant, overly enthusiastic about bringing Shabbos out. A person should try, savor the moment of Shabbos. There were some people who would wait till Tuesday. I'm not recommending you do that. But there were people who waited till Tuesday. Right? The Baal Shem Tov would take out Shabbos on a Tuesday, just to delay it as much as possible. But definitely, a person shouldn't immediately, as soon as Shabbos comes out, to end Shabbos. It should be the longer that you delay Shabbos, so the same happens to you. Right? In afterlife, Hashem will delay you going back into Gehenna. And the last thing, we'll take some questions to end up on a good note, not a Gehenna. So it's written that every Motzei Shabbos, Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, has a list of people, and he writes down the names of every single Jew that kept Shabbos that week. And this is handed down and stored in eternal memory, right? In the world's, we call it the global consciousness, is written and stored down forever for all generations. That your name goes on a special list every single Motzei Shabbos. If you successfully completed the Shabbos and you kept the Shabbos, your name goes down on a spiritual list, of great people. And that merit stands for you, not just for yourself, but for generations and generations to come. So every single Shabbos, it's a new entity and it's a new opportunity. So even if a person didn't keep last Shabbos and you don't intend on keeping the Shabbos after, but every single Shabbos, it's a new mitzvah and a new opportunity to keep. And every single one that you keep, there's the blessings which come with it. And that's basically a little bit of an introduction of what Shabbos is about. In the weeks to come, please God, we're going to look at the laws of preparing for Shabbos, how we cook on Shabbos, what we can and can't do, and and basically the rules and the reasons behind them. All right, so guys, if you have any questions, you can unmute yourselves. Happy to take them.
He's making a list. He's checking it twice. He's going to find out if he kept Shabbat this night.
You better be good.
Yeah. All right. Anyone?
Like Santa, right?
Like Santa.
Just like.
All right.
Okay,
Anyone have questions?
Anyone? Harry.
I don't think I have any questions on this one. I'm looking forward to the more in-depth.
Good. So this thing was basically just the introduction to the new section.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Ashton,
all of that is just more reinforcing on my desire to try to be more Shomer Shabbat for sure. And we've come a long way already, but we still have a ways to go.
Yes, and as always, it's important to know that it's always important to redo the laws of Shabbos and to continuously revise it. Because even if you've been keeping Shabbos, your whole life, you always need to continuously recap and revise the laws of what how it works, and just to refresh yourself and to also reinvigorate yourself, so it doesn't become stale ever.
Yeah.
Good. Yes. That's it. Evelyn. Any questions, answers? No.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, because I don't know if my mic is on or not. I'm so stupid with this stuff. If a person is not Jewish, I was told they cannot keep Shabbat.
Right. So, as we said earlier, Shabbos is what we call a sign between Hashem and Jewish people. So there's no obligation for a non-Jewish person to keep Shabbos. If your person is intending on converting to Judaism, so you can practice everything and go through to get used to all the different laws. But one actually, technically speaking, is not obligated to keep Shabbos. It's only a commandment for when you are Jewish.
Okay, anybody else?
I don't have a question, but I was going to say Lila Tov to everyone.
Lila Tov.
Thank you so much for coming.
See you guys.
Good. Yeah, have
Yeah.
a good night. Or good morning for you. All right. Okay, guys. That's it. We'll see you, please, God, next week. Have a good week, everyone. Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov.
עם ישראל חי, עם ישראל חי, עם ישראל